I saw the greatest film last night. It was Creed 3, and Michael B. Jordan absolutely did an amazing job telling a story and connecting with audiences, which I believe is the evolution of filmmaking. A new generation, and Keith and I talk about this and many more things on this episode of Hollywood Breaks. Hey, last night I took my entire family to see the movie Creed.
Wow. Is
Dude,
it entire family appropriate? Oh, you got all teenagers, so I guess
it is. Well, you know, the new cuss word that's okay is the word shit. Apparently you can say shit everywhere, including television and on Disney. Like your kid, the word
get a
shit
PG-13.
It doesn't. Nobody cares. But then they throw shit in every form of it, in every way. But yeah, no F words, no.
Well, the F word gets you. I think you get one F word in PG-13, maybe.
Well, there was a piece of music that they threw that
Okay.
word was in. But absolutely, Michael B. Jordan killed. He was the director. He killed this movie. It was, I mean, it was good killed, not bad killed. The fight scene, Keith, I'm so excited for you to watch this film. I've never seen a boxing scene like he directed it, and it was fascinating. And the audio, you got to go to the theater. It is pounding you with bass.
Well, did you see it? Let me ask you this: did you see it in IMAX?
No, just a regular theater, kind of a cushy seat or whatever, but amazing.
When it wasn't 3.5 hours, it was only like a little under 2, I hope.
It was the regular run. Yeah.
Thank God. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'm about to check it out.
It was,
right.
and it's obviously it's an extension from the Rocky series. Yeah. So there's a couple of callbacks, but no Sylvester Stallone. So it's obviously a new evolution of it.
Well, interesting enough, Sylvester apparently had some creative issues with the movie. But
he wasn't in it.
That's actually got 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. I just looked it up. Wow.
I'm telling you, man, it's a story driven thing, not just a boxing driven thing. It's really good. And I love Michael B. Jordan's just obviously creative vision.
All right. I'm going to put in the list.
Yeah.
See if I can get there. I want to see it because when I went to see Avatar in IMAX, they promoted the fact that Creed 3 was going to be in IMAX, and they had Michael B. Jordan talking about how he used IMAX cameras, and so I'm like, ooh.
I might go see the IMAX version of it. That's true.
Good. Yeah, he was talking about how he used IMAX cameras, like Christopher Nolan does. He's like, you're gonna see a boxing match like you've never seen it before. So now that you said it sounds really great and it looks great, I'm definitely intrigued.
And let's give credit to the producers, because the story was pitched. The writers were totally different writers. Obviously, a brand new director, so first-time director. That's a pretty amazing bet. The evolution of the story was great, but to get it made, to follow a storyline, to set up another storyline. I mean, I'll say the producers really put out an amazing package together. They did an excellent job. Sound, audio, music, the acting, all the characters, fascinating. Really, really.
Wow. Good. That's kind of awesome. Yep. And it was.
Now
you got me amped to see it.
Yeah, you'll see. And I'll say, majority, if not, and here's how good the movie is. There's no registry for you in looking at it and wondering who the actors are and what color their skin is. But I think, now that I think about it right now, I'm going to say 100% are minority.
Wow.
But I couldn't even tell you. It was, this is new Hollywood. It was great. It was
nice.
Really great. It's unfortunate it's Creed 3. If Creed 1 would have, or Creed 2.
I thought Creed 1. I mean, well, here's the other question. Do you feel like you have to see the first two to understand the third?
Oh, I guess Ivan Drago's son is in here. So there's one, but still, isn't that somewhat minority? International person or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, but you don't feel like you have to see the first two in order to enjoy this one?
There is no No. You could start right now. And we binge watched from Rocky all the way to this, leading up to this moment.
Oh, to prep. Nice.
Yeah. I needed to introduce my kids to. By the way, I gotta say, looking back, Mr. T was a badass, man. Rocky 3. It is. Yeah. Mr. T is angry. That dude is angry. He is good. I forgot how evil and awesome he was.
Yeah, that was a good one. I like, everyone loves 4 just because of its cheesy US versus Russia, but it's still a great one. 5 is kind of a throwaway.
5 we couldn't get. I guess 5's the only one we missed, but the Rocky Balboa, we saw that. Yep. But 4 was the soundtrack. It's funny because Eye of the Tiger was actually in 3, but it was the Rocky 4 soundtrack.
No. Eye of the Tiger was 2. Eye of the Tiger was 2.
Nope. 3.
No, I'm almost 100% sure that Eye of the Tiger was
Michelle, you're gonna have to look this
song for 2, not 4. 4 is way too late.
No, it wasn't 4. All I'm saying is we all had the Rocky 4 soundtrack because it came with Columbia Records.
You like Hearts on Fire. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it came as part of the 12 tapes for 1 penny collection. That was one of the ones you could get. So that's why we all had it. So we all reference it as on that soundtrack. But
it is a great soundtrack. I mean, James Brown with Living in America, that was great. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about Rocky 4 is you can see the influence of MTV on feature films because there's an entire like music videos in the middle of the movie, and like the 80s had. Remember, we always had those music montages, so you can have a pop song in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It was like perfect. And then it's the beginning of the title sequence changing too. They had a very different title sequence for 4 than they had for the other ones were just the word Rocky and Rocky 2, Rocky 3. Rocky 4 was 2 gloves. Really, really bad visual.
That is classic cheeseball 80s.
Yeah. But what was fun is to watch, Rocky Best Picture, right? So there's like a little bit of film history in watching the Rocky series. I'm not saying they're the greatest films of all time, although some people would say that. But the series to walk through from 1977 to today.
Right.
Sylvester Stallone created a universe as great as the Marvel universe, right? All these now complicated and great characters that are evolving and changing. Maybe not as great as Marvel universe, but you know what I mean? Like it's carried on in his entire career.
Well, yeah, he created a universe. You're right. He created like a universe of Rocky Balboa, and you have all these offshoots. And I thought Creed was really well done, and then Creed 2 I thought was pretty well done, and then obviously, as you said, 3 is really great. And I think it's interesting that you brought up it's sort of like a new Hollywood. I think that's a really good point because Michael B. Jordan directed it. It's sort of like, and the shot with IMAX cameras. They actually promoted the fact that they used IMAX in front of an IMAX movie, which they don't always do. They did a little bit for Dark Knight when they released the first 6 minutes. That was sort of like, come see it. That was the only aspect they shot in IMAX. But it's interesting because it's sort of shifting this idea that you have to make it a more sort of immersive experience versus just a typical plain old movie. And
I swear he used the entire palette when he made it. You'll see the scenes. The battle for Los Angeles takes place in the Dodger Stadium, and just the lighting and the tone, and then again the boxing series. I'm not even going to try to explain it. You just have to watch this.
Well, that was funny because it's interesting you bring that up because that was something that Michael B. Jordan referenced in the spot that I saw before Avatar. Like you're not going to be able to experience boxing like this ever again because it's sort of like this is the first time you're going to see it. You're going to get in there, you're going to hear the shoes, you're going to feel the sweat, you're going to feel the hits. Like he was really pumping it up like this is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen before.
He's right.
And that's what you got to do. And now apparently, as you said, he was spot on. So
it's the tired series of, again, if you've binge watched, you'll see, but you'll understand. But the tired series of like round 1, round 2, this montage of hits and whatever, trying to tell a story in the ring, which is very complicated. You have to imagine all the different storylines you have to play out with 2 guys punching each other.
Yeah,
but it's a redemption game and equal hits or whatever. But he transformed that idea of round 3 to round 12. It plays itself out on a timeline that is
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, right now tracking showing, I think between 38 and 40 million, which is great. Go movie theaters. But so by the way you're talking, it sounds like it might exceed that. I'll be interested to see what the cinema score is this weekend. If they're like AA plus, then this thing could have some serious legs.
Yeah.
And
It
maybe even
feels good
exceed
like
40
Maverick.
million.
That's what it feels like. It feels like the same kind of jolt you got watching a throwback storyline in a new setting. It feels very and contemporary that way. So yeah,
that's
I think
great.
It's the beginning of a new understanding of Hollywood. What it takes.
Well, let's hope that's the direction it takes. I mean, yeah, I don't have much faith in current leadership of Hollywood. So this may be a one-off, but hopefully, if it does really well, that could be a good sign for sort of finding the next generation. I'm glad Michael B. Jordan directed it. It's great that he did a solid job. That means he's probably going to get another movie, which is awesome, because we need a next generation of directors, not Spielberg, the usual Scorsese, the ones we always talk about who are now old. We need a new generation, and it's great to hear that he sort of has elevated the game, and that's what we need in this business right now.
It's also fascinating me in the theaters is this Jesus Revolution movie.
Yeah.
I clearly, because of my personal faith, I've seen a lot of Christian films. Yeah, and they drive me crazy. They're just so tone deaf to what we want to see and feel when going to a theater. I understand the purpose of a Christian film and the audience, the demographic is very clear. And a lot of people use film to preach a sermon, and all films feel very much like that. But take this historical event of Chuck Smith and Costa Mesa in the 70s and what it meant for inclusion. It really was a revolution. They called it the Jesus Revolution, right? The Jesus movement.
Right.
I think it was called the Jesus movement. But there was a contemporary thing that took place that formed in that 70s, not unlike how blockbusters films came about. There was a major church growth movement in that same demographic. It's feeding that same storyline, and to see that play itself out with Kelsey Grammer, acting in it, it's very mainstream. Seems to be getting some notoriety, but of course, I also go to church, so the people I hang out with that are watching the movies, I don't have a very clear demographic of people that don't go to church.
Well, it's funny because I believe the gentleman, the character who played the guy who sort of led the revolution, he's from that hit show The Chosen. He plays, actually, I think he's Jesus in the show The Chosen, which is all about Jesus recruiting his apostles. And I think it's the same production company, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, it is. It's the
I can't remember the name of it.
This is when I would fail seminary if I didn't know the answer to this right now, right? But the producers of it are the Irwin brothers.
The Irwin brothers. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But also this guy, Kevin Downes, I've been watching his career forever. I worked on a film a few years ago called The Lost Medallion, and Kevin Downes was part of it. Kevin Downes was like the kid in the youth group that would carry around video cameras and make films back in the day. And for years, he's been making these Christian films, and many of them aren't things that we would like. But I want to say recently, there's been a lot that they've been evolving, even in their ability to tell stories. And this seems to be right in line with what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at the cast list right now, and Devon Franklin plays a character, and he is a Hollywood exec who I think has a deal at Sony, and it's to produce faith-based film, because I think he's a preacher.
Yeah,
who is involved in he does sort of faith-based films.
Yes, Sony's been recognizing this for years and actually been backing it up. There was a film a few years ago called Mom's Night Out, super like on the comedic front. It was like Sean Astin, and it was clever and funny. And you saw a couple of these Christian guys in that film too, that you're like, oh yeah, of course, that's the throwback. And Kevin Downes actually often plays a role. He and his brother either play a role in the film. So they have kind of fun in this genre,
right?
But this one is, I feel like to pull in a Kelsey Grammer and to get a mainstream play. I'm just telling you, it's from from what I usually hear about from the Christian audience on the films they do. You kind of know what you're getting into, and this one feels like it hit a little bit more of a contemporary tone.
Well, it's interesting because the entertainment strategy guy who, we talked a lot about the audience deep dive, 4-part audience deep dive he did a few months back. And one of the aspects was, yes, the religiosity of the country is dropping, but it's still a huge audience.
Huge. Yeah.
And you can't just ignore it. And there's an opportunity there, but you also can't just throw at them crap, which they're going to recognize as not true to the scripture, or something that's trying to parlay a message that they may not necessarily agree with. It's sort of like going back to the old, big sort of 10 commandment type movies where they just told a biblical story. And this is sort of like one where they're just telling a contemporary story where it was sort of like a revitalization during a time of great unrest. During the late 60s, when everyone felt like the country was falling apart, there was this little thing happening in Southern California, of all places.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to tell those kind of stories. And I think the Erwin brothers do it in a way that doesn't feel preachy. They're just telling a story. And I think, and it has that sort of religious component, and they respect it. They don't treat it like it's some sort of, crazy, bunch of wackos who don't really know what they're doing kind of thing. It's more taught from, told from a more perspective, analysis that shows some respect.
Yeah, it feels very much that way. I think that they've gotten their feet underneath them, I guess. They got this thing, and they and the Downs brothers, I think there's things that they have learned along the way of what it means to tell a story and not be too much in your face. I think their breakthrough film was October Baby, which actually got a really good mainstream play, and it was the storyline there was a contemporary Christian concept,
right?
But they were also telling a human story, and I think it's the human experience that this focuses on as well, because there was a group of people disenchanted by their culture and looking for some sort of truth or some sort of understanding, and that human experience that they lived out is a real experience. It doesn't need to have an overtone of saccharine Christianity and Bible thumping to make hire legitimate actors, for goodness sakes. It always felt like there was C plus B actors going into Christian films because they had no budgets to have a legitimate budget. I think it's about 15 million. It's pretty
well. It's interesting because I think there's definitely a shift happening because Mark Wahlberg is not quiet about his faith at all. He's out now promoting a Catholic prayer app. And he came out and he was on the Today Show not too long ago, and he said, listen, I'm not quiet about my faith. It's not exactly something that's popular in my industry, which is actually true.
Right.
So it's interesting because, Father Stu did really well. Didn't do so great in box office, but it did really well in streaming. So there's definitely an aspect that there's an audience there. And I think that's what entertainment strategy guy's point was. Like there's an audience there that wants to be sold stories and told stories, and you can't just ignore them. You can't go out and spend $100 million and expect to make your money back. But if you're smart about it, like they obviously are in Jesus Revolution, I don't know what the budget was, but I'm sure they've made their budget
15
back
million.
and then some at this point. And it's probably going to just keep going and going and going, not to mention what their streaming and SVOD numbers are going to look like. So I think it's important to recognize that there's still an audience there. And I think a lot of the other studios, I mean, I think Lionsgate released this one. Sony's obviously a little bit involved, but none of the other studios have really touched it all.
Well, I think that you if you're Disney, I think that you're I think you play a totally different game in the world.
Yeah, but they're trying to appeal.
Paramount has its own niche, but if you think about this, it makes a lot of sense, right? If it's the end of the blockbuster, then it's really the niche movies that we're talking about. We're talking about an evolution of film making or film acceptance, and you can create niche movies or niche audience. We don't have to do $400 million movie budgets and $1 trillion returns in order for it to be successful. We have a long play model now. We have the ability for it to play once and very super long tail in its ability to view. OTT platforms are monetizing in different ways. And theaters they're happy to have anything, any kind of experience. So it makes sense that the human experience films are the ones that people are relating to, instead of getting another visual effects phenomenon. Not that they're not bad. Clearly Avatar's did very, very well this year. And
right.
Ant-Man is kind of proving like you can't just throw anything at the screen and make it legitimate. So there's something that's evolution. We're seeing it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
it kind of crashed on us, didn't it? Like it didn't do very well in the ratings to begin with, but kind of crashed.
Well, it's one more point I want to make before we start talking about Ant-Man is like, it's interesting you bring about human experience, because I think that's a lot what Creed 3 is. Creed 3 is very much about a human experience of a guy whose father was well known. He didn't really know him. He's trying to live up to that image, and then he starts creating his own image. But then, then there's still his past that we didn't really know much about in Creed 1, but now we're sort of getting more of the backstory in 3. But it's still sort of like that human experience of what we're all we all have moments in our life that are sort of similar to that. And, you know, the Jesus Revolution is very, I think, relevant to our time, because I think there's a lot of people that feel like things are crashing around them and they need something that gives their lives meaning. So I think that's definitely something, there's definitely something, a shift happening. And you're right, theaters need products. So I'm hoping we see more of that. Now, as regards to Ant-Man, it had a great opening weekend, stellar opening weekend. Kudos to Assad and the team at Disney, because they opened up that sucker, you know, like you were supposed to as a marketing team. But the second week was down almost, I think 68%, almost 70%, which is not great. I mean, this is not entirely unexpected. The reviews were not great. It was the worst reviewed Marvel movie next to the Eternals, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes. And their cinema score, I think, was a B-, which is just horrendous. Like that. Wow. So these were all, I mean, I don't think Marvel was particularly shocked by any of this, or Disney in general, because they kind of saw it coming, especially when you get numbers like that. But I think this is telling the tale that Marvel, like I said this in my newsletter this week, I'm never going to bet against Kevin Feige and Marvel. They've done a phenomenal job. Their movies still make hundreds of millions of dollars. But the problem is they're starting to tarnish the brand a little bit. And I think when Ant-Man is supposed to launch the next phase of the Marvel universe, of the cinematic universe, and this is what you get, a sort of an uneven product, then I think you're gonna have to take a step back.
Yeah, and it would be too bad if it was like they said this is the end of the Paul Rudd, you know, career in the Marvel universe, from Sexiest Man Alive to bombing in this. what a career!
The worst Ant-Man movie.
But it'd be sad if it was like just they use it as a throwaway for exposition for the next. Like to not have a strong conclusion from one item to the next is a very unfortunate, let's say, part of the Marvel storyline. Yeah. But I believe it's still just telling the same thing that we believe, which is the thought process of big gigantic effects being the accumulation. There was something different in the whole Endgame phenomenon, where it took us so long it took us, you know, my kid's lifetime to get us up to that moment. But my kids are no longer think that's a phenomenon anymore, or even to reset. Oh, do they want to restart something they've lived their whole lifetime? No, I think they want to evolve themselves. And
well, I think
they're looking for connectivity in some other type of entertainment form if it's not going to actually come in film.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? It's because when Iron Man came out, it was such a game changer. You know, not only was it Robert Downey Jr., you know, and sort of Marvel, it was I think it was the first movie that Marvel released that sort of like they had produced it because they had investment. So it's sort of like this, and then it just built, and then all these movies were like interchangeable, and it was like it was that's like
why to me, like it's Captain America that was the game changer, because Iron Man by itself, although great film and beginning the storyline, we didn't yet understand how the storyline played itself out until Captain America showed up.
Right.
And he was another, just like Iron Man, unknown. He's not Superman, Spider-Man, Batman person.
Right.
These are characters we were being introduced to on the cinematic side. Obviously the comic book side, we're not so far, but
I mean, and you sort of go from that experience, which was phenomenal, and you said it was like over 12 years and countless films, and they wrapped it up in a nice neat bow at the end of Endgame, and it was sort of like, okay, what's next? And it's sort of like they just want to be, okay, we're just going to tell another story. And I think that's not going to be enough. Now, again, the good news for Feige and his team is, Iger's announcement, they're going to cut back on quote unquote general entertainment, which sounds like they're going to cut back on Marvel as well, is good for Feige and his team, because now they can start focusing on the quality versus the quantity. I think they were just churning out shows because that was sort of the edict from on high. We need to feed the beast, start telling the stories that you've always wanted to tell, but we just haven't really been able to. Well, now we do. We have the money. We're going to spend it, so let's go do it. And then you start to see the sort of unevenness starting to show up, because regardless of whether or not anyone loved the last two Avengers movies, they were entertaining. Yes, they were a little long, but at the end of the day, it was like such a great little wrap up to sort of this universe that had been going on for so many years. And now it's like, well, Marvel, going to see a Marvel movie isn't a guarantee the movie is going to be good. So I think that in and of itself is a problem that Marvel is going to have to address. Again, I don't want to bet against Kevin Feige. I'm sure he's got a few tricks up his sleeve. He still has X-Men. He still has a Fantastic Four. He still has a lot more properties that he can expose and, exploit, although that might not be the word. But, I think he's got to start thinking of other ways to do it versus just these big movies now that just aren't, it's gonna, you'll have a great opening weekend, but if you have drops like this for Ant-Man, then the returns are not going to be there.
And I'd say this, like, I know it sounds counterintuitive, because to be a fan of films, you don't want anything to fail, and you appreciate the hard work that people put in something, especially investment and time and dedication to something like the Marvel Universe. But I'm kind of excited that we're moving on. I think that it's played itself out. There's something, a new tale to tell. I think there's a new challenge to take on. Disney's going to have to grow up. They invested a few $1 billion in something and got a greater return on that. And now it's time for them to evolve into something different. And I want the young filmmakers to get an opportunity to try something new. I don't want it to be dominated with visual effects films taking over 4 out of 5 theaters at my local Cineplex. Like where's the edge for any filmmaker to get in and make something new? I think that evolution is really, really great. And Oscars seems to be challenging us in that same way. Like there's a great opportunity now to say something different. I think Maverick feels like a throwback, but it's saying something, right? There's a nostalgia resonating with us that worked itself out well there. Avatar in the theaters is doing something similar, although I don't have a nostalgia feeling for Avatar, but
no.
But there is a little bit at play here, and I think we're going to see something. I don't know. I'm excited. I mean, let's set our clocks, but I'm going to say, like, in the next 12 months, I think we're going to see a push towards something new in the theater.
Well, I would hope so.
Punch? I mean, should I say a slap towards something?
No, a slap might be a slap, but they're not abandoning the Marvel. They've already laid out the next phase, so they'll probably keep moving forward with it, because it's still doing well. I mean,
dude,
the drop was not spectacular.
$1 billion investment. They gotta.
They're not going to abandon ship, but and we'll see how much. Excuse me. We'll see how much Creed 3 takes out of their box office this weekend. Probably a sizable chunk. But it's not the end of the Marvel era per se. And again, the optimistic side of me wants to say that you're right, that this will be the beginning of something new, and maybe we'll see an evolution. But we've started to see the little bits and pieces of it, but it's not going to continue unless, again, we get some new blood in there. And it's not just the talent, it's also in the studio suites. I mean, they just announced yesterday or this week that Courtney Valenti has just been hired at Amazon. Courtney Valenti has been around for like 30 plus years. Yeah, she's had some hits, and okay, great. I wish her all the best, but why can't they find somebody younger? Like, why do they have to go for these people that have been around forever and just doing the same damn thing over and over again?
So right now they have to choose experience, because we have a downturn in the economy, down to the market, and they're pretending confidence, right? So they're saying, we're not going to do anything new. This is a preservation motion, not a promotion moment. But this is what gives birth to the next movement. Okay. Like this is end of phase, just like end of phase for Marvel. This is end of phase for that thing. And this new, I hope like we start shaking things up, man. This is going to be great. Yeah. Hey, listen, we have to wrap up, but I just want to make one more quick comment of about like, well, I should say it like this. I know who's not watching Netflix this weekend. The Chris Rock special that's coming up is so interesting to me because one, what a genius move to do a live event clearly before the Oscars, obviously playing on a shocking moment that we all could remember. But to go live, Netflix live, that's a new
Saturday,
launch of a new thing, right?
7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, and they did, I guess they did a test run this past week and everything went well technology wise. So this could be a huge game changer. If you know, I mean, Netflix dived a little bit into the live space, I think, with the SAG Awards, but this is like their first like live event, like with an actual talent. So this could bode the next gear that Netflix downshifts to in terms of their product, because sports is obviously right around the corner.
Yeah, years ago in the broadcast space, you were hearing the broadcasters talk about live politics and sports, whereas where television was going to make its money in the future because it was the only live event, and all the content was moving. All the other content was being moved and watched very differently, like binge watching, and even back when I was hearing the days, people were talking about getting the DVD set to watch it. So they've been talking about this for nearly 20 years. But now for OTT to be standing on Hulu did this, and now standing on a platform of like, no, you don't own live either. Well, this is entertainment and politics and sports all together in one live event coming up with Chris Rock, because we're talking about something that we all need reconciliation for. And for them to snatch that moment and then not just to throw it away, but to take that moment and evolve Netflix, it's going to be a major draw on some major servers. There's going to be a lot of like server fans.
I mean, it's going to be like, it's going to explode on Twitter, I'm sure. I mean, he hasn't really said much other than a couple of jokes. So this will be his first real event that's sort of broadcast wide to talking about what happened almost a year ago. And to do it a week before the Oscars is just absolutely brilliant, because everyone's going to be talking about it. Everyone's going to be talking about, oh, you remember what happened last year, the slap, blah, blah, you know, and then here we go.
Everybody but Will Smith. Will Smith's the one person I know will not be watching Netflix this week.
He will not be watching Netflix, and he might be keep his distance this week.
I have a feeling Will Smith actually already canceled his Netflix subscription. I think he probably went, not gonna.
He's like, I'm not paying for this month. I'm gonna re-up next month.
He has YouTube, so he can watch Red Table and see what his wife's up to.
He's
watching Netflix.
There you go.
All right, my friend. Well, maybe I'll see you soon in New York City. I'm going there next week. We'll see yourself soon. And we have Oscar specials coming up.
Yes,
we're going to do a pre-pro and an after show.
So after show, yes.
Dive into some of the politics.
Hopefully Robin Geisen will be joining us as well, because she's a fan favorite when she comes on for the Oscar stuff. So we'll hopefully see her, and then next week, hopefully.
Yeah, get some of her insider's playbook on this thing.
Yep.
That'd be great. Well, good to see you. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we'll see you next week on the Oscar show.
See you next week.